All right. So, again, thanks for all our amazing panelists coming to spend some time with us. We have Dr. Colorado. He's associate professor and vice chair in the Department of PM&R at the University of Alabama, Birmingham. He serves as the program director for the PM&R residency program at UAB and medical director for sports and musculoskeletal medicine. He is board certified in PM&R, sports medicine, brain injury medicine, electrodiagnostic medicine, and neuromuscular ultrasound. Next, we have Dr. Prideaux. She is an assistant professor at the Department of PM&R at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. She received her medical doctorate from the University of Colorado and completed her PM&R residency at Mayo Clinic, Rochester, Minnesota, and followed up with a sports medicine fellowship at the University of Utah. Her clinical practice consists mainly of musculoskeletal rehabilitation. Dr. Prideaux was the associate resident program director for 8 years prior to becoming the program director in July of 2022. She has a special interest in medical education, physician wellness, and equity and inclusion. Next, we have Dr. Friedlander. She's an assistant professor at the Department of PM&R at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, Maryland. She received her medical doctorate from the University of Maryland, completed her PM&R residency at Sinai Hospital in Baltimore. Dr. Friedlander has been the residency program director at Johns Hopkins since 2018. She is also the medical director and attending physician at the Johns Hopkins Bayview Acute Rehabilitation Unit, which is the majority of her clinical work. She also supervises the residency continuity clinic. She is completing her master's in health professions education at Johns Hopkins to support her interest in medical education and wellness. And last but not least, we have Dr. Pham. She is a professor at the Department of PM&R at UCLA. She received her medical doctorate from UCLA, where she also completed her residency training. She previously served as the UCLA residency program director and currently is serving as the associate director of the UCLA PM&R program and current residency program director of the PM&R Pain Fellowship at UCLA. So big thank you to all our amazing speakers, and thank you all so much for coming to spend the evening with us. So we have like I was telling our speakers have a lot of great questions that y'all submitted. Thank you for submitting those. We'll go ahead and get started. Anyone can jump in and answer as you would like. So the first one is can you please give a brief overview of your program's process for evaluating applications? More specifically, once all the applications are released to your program, how many people review each application, and what is kind of the surface level of how someone gets invited for an interview?
So for us, I probably do the majority of review for the applications. We have certainly adopted the holistic review of applications, which is why it's a lot of work and it takes a lot longer than breezing through things briefly. As part of the holistic review, one thing that I'm looking for is how that applicant is going to contribute value to our particular program and our institution based on our program and institution's mission and aims and goals. So it's very mission driven and specific to our particular mission and aims. So there's a very comprehensive evaluation looking at all the experiences, different attributes that the applicant may have. The attributes that applicant have comes out in many different parts of the application, including the letters of rec, the MSPE Dean's letter, and the personal statement. Many places those attributes can come out. So looking at those experiences and the competencies that kind of align with those ACGME competencies. So we do, the program signals, the preference signals, do look at those in regards to, as one data point in regards to offering interviews. So for example, if I have two applicants that look very similar and then one signaled us and one didn't, I may offer the one that signaled us an interview. But it's one data point, and we do look at that, but it's not the sole criteria for offering an interview. Those are some things that come to mind initially. I could let someone else have a chance to talk too.
I would echo a lot of what was said. Certainly looking at the whole application, holistic view of the application. Our program coordinator will, myself and our associate program director will look at essentially all the applications, but we won't look at them until they've been deemed as all complete. So once our program coordinator says complete, then we'll look at them. And it's usually, I'll end up probably looking at all of them and ultimately, but the first pass is usually myself and my associate program director. I would agree with everything that was said about the signals. I know that's a new thing, and that's kind of an interesting discussion point in and of itself. But again, I think that does play a role because there are so many applicants. When you've got very similar applications overall, the program signal can be a little bit of a tiebreaker in some sense.
We had have a similar process at Johns Hopkins. I review every single application. I'm excited this year to have a little bit of help, but I will probably still make sure to look at every application, although it's always nice to have a second set of eyes at least in case you miss anything or read something incorrectly. And we actually have a third person, well, it's second person from last year. It'll be a third person this coming year, who is a non-physician reviewer to look at aspects of diversity. So sort of a non-biased third party member to help ensure that we are looking and not including any of our own biases. Previously, it was just my biases, so it was good to have somebody else take a look. But now it'll be maybe one other person, at least our assistant program director who's joined us this year. In regards to program signaling, as we've mentioned, this will be the second year that option is available, and it's going to be a few more. You'll have, I believe, 5 signals available if you're applying this coming application cycle, which is one more than we had previously. So I think that was interesting, and it definitely was another piece of data as was mentioned. But it's really hard to know how meaningful it is ultimately. We also had geographic signals to look at, and we did try and review those as well. So anyone who did signal us for either geographic or preference signals, we made sure to look kind of one more time at their application just to make sure, because we recognize the increased interest potentially. But I'm still kind of holding my breath to say that it does or does not guarantee, or I don't want to make people think that if you signal us that you're guaranteed to get an interview. Although I will say that many of the people, at least last year, who signaled us had already communicated or interacted with us in some way, expressing interest in the program. So it wasn't necessarily the first time we'd heard from many of those people. So that's always exciting to see continued enthusiasm for a program. But then, yes, of course, all of the other aspects of holistic review continue to be true.
Awesome. Yeah, I think bringing up the signals and geographic preferences is a really hot topic that a lot of students are curious about right now. We received several questions on them. One of the interesting ones was, if you've signaled, if you've already kind of given a geographic preference to the area, do you also need to signal the program within that area? And conversely, if your top choice program is outside of a geographical area that you get preference to, will they still consider your signal and take it seriously?
I guess on that last point, if the program is your top choice and it's outside of where you geographic signaled, that program probably won't get that information. If you didn't geographic signal in their location, they just don't see anything there. So they don't know if you answered that question or didn't answer that question. So we don't really know. But otherwise, I would say that I took note of whether there was a geographic signal or a program signal. It certainly made me take note. I would say that that means something either way.
I think that answer is different for every program, because if you have a geographic signal in a very an area with a lot of programs, obviously that's going to be viewed differently than other places where there's basically, one program in the state or things like that. So that is I just want to emphasize that's a tricky question. And I don't think you can really have a very firm, a correct answer for that. But I think in general, the signals do, I hate to say more than just saying that they do play a role.
As she mentioned, we don't see it if you're not signaling our region. So there's no way that we would know whether or not that was the case if the program is program signaled and not geographic signaled. On the other hand, geographic signals can be a little confusing because the way that they've divided it up may not be obvious. So like, for example, Maryland is southeast. So we're lumped with Alabama and Florida and Tennessee, and we're in a really different place than those places. So if you're like, I got a lot of geographic signals that said, I love warm weather. And I'm like, okay, well, we get a lot of cold weather in Maryland. So sometimes it can be a little misleading. And also just recognizing that, it's a big section of the country that can be geographically signaled essentially. So we happen to be kind of on the border of between two areas, yay, Mason-Dixon line. But still it does kind of we do actually kind of have to read. Sometimes people put comments in, oh, I'm from Florida, or I'm from Colorado, or wherever you might be from. And that actually, you're really looking for somewhere in a specific state or like city region. That does make more of a difference. And so, if that's the case, it's probably not going to influence you in a positive way if you're wanting to be in a completely different state.
Kind of going off of your mentioning, kind of showing ties to your program. One question mentioned was where's the best place and best way to kind of show any kind of tie or connection you may have to a program or the kind of area?
I think other than the signal, it really can come out a little bit. I mean, it can be shown obviously in the CV. It can be shown to some extent in the personal statement, but I think elaborating on those ties essentially comes out more maybe in the interview process. But I think each of those areas you can, as a reviewer, you can kind of look for different ties, but the full explanation of those ties really comes out more during the interview process.
And then
Agreed. Not sure I would have more to add there.
Again, I found it, I kind of, even though the application process is sort of official, I've received many emails from applicants who have a strong interest in the program for maybe having a connection or being from the area, or wanting to return to the state or whatever it might be. So I welcome whatever form of communication people want to send my way. I try and at least acknowledge that I received said message, but because of the rules of NRMP, I'm not allowed to sort of divulge any promises. However, I like I said, and I'm happy to post even my email here. I just because there is so much information in the application, I welcome whatever additional ways people would like to reach out to us to let us know. Sometimes they've done it actually through our residents as well. They've met them at a conference or some other, know them through medical school, and they ask that they send on some sort of message that they have a strong interest. So
That's a good point. I mean, in terms of any additional information or any information you want to share will never be viewed negatively typically from the program. Oh, why are they sending me something extra? You know, it's usually welcomed.
Yeah, agree. It's not uncommon that the students will make connections with our residents or even meet with us at one of the professional organization meetings. And similar to Dr. Friedlander, happy to hear from anyone at any time. Love hearing from y'all.
All right, one more question on the signaling kind of topic. If I did an away rotation at a program, should I still signal them, or is doing the rotation enough to kind of signify my interest in the program?
I think that's a pretty clear answer that that you should signal. If you're interested in that program, that you should signal them. Whether it's a home program, an away program that you did a visiting rotation at, if you're interested in that program, that you should consider using a signal. And I think that's the official recommendation as well. And one reason that we went from 4 signals to 5 signals this year to kind of reinforce that recommendation to use those signals.
Exactly. So like having that extra signal allows people to have one more, you know, extra spot outside of their either home program or, you know, elective experience. But we assume that the home program, if maybe it isn't, or the elective is something that you've already expressed interest in. We still think you should use, it is recommended that you use the signal. That is the official best practices recommendations, and that's actually available, I believe, on the AMC website for PM&R, and also through physiatry.org or AAP's recommendations.
All right, changing gears a little bit. So with increasing competitiveness of PM&R, some students are told to dual apply. As PM&R is a specialty that values showing interest in the field, will students be looked upon negatively if programs find out that they are dual applying?
Good question. Certainly the showing the dedication to PM&R is key from my standpoint. So I guess it's one thing if you're dual applying and PM&R is a backup and maybe not your first choice, or you're dual applying and PM&R is your actual first choice. But yeah, we definitely want to see that dedication to the field, and you can show that in many different ways, the passion and dedication to that. But yeah, sometimes it's hard to tell. I don't know. I feel like it's usually not obvious to me that that someone's dual applying until after the match.
I would agree with that. I mean, I think it's hard. I mean, PM&R is such a unique specialty that especially dual applying they're just pretty different specialties for the most part. I mean, when you compare PM&R to almost any other specialty. So again, that goes to the dedication to the field. And to Kara's point, I probably haven't, maybe there's many applications I didn't even know. But I think if it became across really clear, a classic one is sometimes orthopedic surgery with PM&R. Those are maybe a little bit more clear, and I hate to say that it would hurt, but it certainly wouldn't help if that's kind of gets conveyed across in the application.
Yeah, I think it's a little confusing too, with you're reading a personal statement and somebody saying, oh, I'm so in love with orthopedic surgery or ophthalmology or whatever other specialty, and you're like, okay, you know, like, do they intend to apply these, or is this a mistake? So it definitely kind of puts a little bit of a question. Similarly, if letters of recommendation say this person would make an outstanding surgeon, or, you know, whatever it is, you're kind of like, well, that's good to know, but they're not going to be one if they come here. So, you know, that is more the issue is like, you know, if everything about their application is pointing in a different direction, it doesn't really support why you would want to have them in that program. That having been said, I don't know, we don't always know. So if you're dual applying for reasons of not fearing you're not going to match, you should be very conscientious about how you differentiate and share your application materials. Because utilizing the same letters of recommendation for multiple specialties is going to probably be obvious, and that may not impact you the way you want it to.
Kind of shifting gears to personal statements now. So when writing personal statements for medical school, we were told to grab the reader's attention with the story and truly use the space to tell a narrative about our interest in medicine. Do you feel like the ERAS personal statements should be similar and read like a good story, or should they be on the more formal kind of cut and dry side?
I've seen excellent personal statements go either way. I've seen, and you know, you want to, these are people reviewing the applications are reviewing a lot of applications. So a lot of times it's more so the one that stands out, more so than maybe the format or the structure that they're using. Obviously content is important, but the standing out part, appropriately standing out, is probably the most important.
Yeah, I think that we read a lot of personal statements, and I think the biggest thing is maybe to talk about what not to do in your personal statement. So don't make grammatical errors and those sorts of things that are going to stand out as being careless and maybe disorganized. So I think those things stand out more than, shining as, in general. For most of the personal statements, but it's a good place to just be sincere with your why do you want to go into PM&R, and maybe share some unique experiences in your story that might stand out a bit, but and then avoid some of those mistakes.
Yeah, I think that that's kind of the most important thing. I mean, the same is probably true for your interview day, like just to the opportunity to be, genuinely who you are, and hopefully let a little bit of that show, because obviously we really only have who you are on paper initially. The benefit of the interview is we get a little bit more interaction to sort of let you come through and hopefully, connect and figure out, if we're the right fit and vice versa. But that's kind of what we're trying to glean from the personal statement. Honestly, for me, at least, yeah, I mean, if there's some obviously huge errors that would probably stand out to me, but I don't, care that much about the format, or you don't have to be the most beautiful writer. I'm certainly not. I just think that if people are truly who they are, then usually you get a sense of that from reading that.
I see Dr. Pam's here now too. Did you hear the original question, Dr. Pam?
Yes, and I apologize. I think I totally calculated the Pacific time.
No worries at all.
So with us, I think if you have a good story, I think it's important to convey that through a personal statement. Anybody would have a good story, but I think it's important to have it well polished. Make sure there's no grammar mistakes or spelling mistakes and things like that. We do try to read every personal statements, and it after a while it kind of runs in together. So definitely, if you have a good story, I think it's good to bring that forward.
All right. What are your thoughts of using parts or themes from your VSLO personal statement for your ERAS personal statement?
Sorry, Hunter, can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry. What is your thought or opinion on using like bits and parts from your VSLO personal statement or your ERAS personal statement?
I guess I don't see why you couldn't use parts of that. I read a lot of VSLO statements, and by interview time, it's probably all going to be new to me. I'm probably not going to remember a lot of those. So
Yeah, I would agree. It's not like we're not gonna look up anything prior and hold that against the person.
Yeah, me too, I agree.
If it helps inspire you to continue writing and figuring out what you have to say, do what you need to do. There's a question in the chat though about, I got very distracted by it because it was like, I've never heard that before, about using an onomatopoeia followed by describing an injury someone suffered. That's like, I'm shocked that that's a like piece of information that's being shared out there.
That might be the sports medicine fellowship personal statement. Just kidding. That's a comment.
Got it.
again, if something like that is part of your story, and you want to talk about it, that's fine. But no, I wouldn't say that that's something that is common or that you have to do.
Now that it's been mentioned to me, though, I'm probably going to notice if it comes up in applications because I didn't know that was a thing.
It might be this year. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know.
All right. One more personal statement based question. Should students personalize their personal statements to each program or their top choices? If so, do you have any advice on how to best do this?
So I'd say most commonly what I see is maybe a little addition paragraph at the end of a personal statement that just like a question was asked earlier, how much you convey a particular interest in that program or that geographic region. And so certainly something that we notice. And you have a limited number of signals that you can use. So if there's another program that you're really interested in that you might not have been able to signal, that could be another place to convey particular interest. It is something that I notice.
Yeah, we do see that, but one thing I will point out is make sure that it's in the context of something specific to that program. I see a lot of times where you could literally change the name and it could apply to anything. So just make sure that it's kind of specific, because that also makes it not stand out as much either, even if you use the program's name.
Yeah, we definitely notice it. But then again, if you don't have the name, it's okay. So it's not like you really have to, get dinged if it's not personalized to our program. But a lot of people would know that if it's a generic, just changing the name, like Dr. Colorado was saying, it's very noticeable. So you got to be really careful when you just insert a different name in. So you're applying to California and you're saying you love the snow and the change in season, it's not applicable to somewhere in California. So you just make sure that you change that as well.
One follow-up question too was, so students often here try to keep their personal statements like under a page. Is it okay to go over that page if we're adding a paragraph to achieve some of these things?
Paragraph over doesn't bother me. 3/4 of another 3/4 of or whatever would start to get a little bit long if it doesn't really add that much, but a little bit over doesn't bother.
I agree.
Yeah, it's okay.
Just be kind to us. Just remember we're
read a lot.
Like last year I was over 600 applications, and so take pity on us program directors, okay? And get to the point if you can. And sometimes that's hard, we get it, but hopefully that's possible.
I feel like that's really good advice. All right. For challenging family or life situations, possible red flags, or difficult hardships during medical school, should these be discussed in the impactful experience section, the personal statement, or possibly both? And then would not addressing a red flag be a bad move?
I think the impactful experiences is intended to be discussing things that are not discussed somewhere else in the application. So I don't know that you have to repeat experiences multiple times, but yes, if you don't write about it in your personal statement, then talking about how you've overcome challenges or obstacles and or you know about your information about your background or your life experiences that weren't shown somewhere else is a great place to talk about the impactful experiences, things that did shape who you are, those experiences that you went through and the circumstances that you were in during those experiences. But I think that's the point, is to kind of use that space where for things that are not talked about elsewhere in the application.
Yeah, I think you should definitely explain it, because that make a difference between getting an interview or not. And if you have a lot of applications, we have to use some kind of criteria to screen out applicants. And if you recognize it's red flags, it's probably red flags for a program director as well. And so for our program, I think it's important just to address some of it.
Yeah, I say address the elephant in the room. With our holistic review, we're going to notice some of those things, and so it's better to address it somewhere. Specifically where, I don't know that we care that much, but address it somewhere.
I've seen it in the dean's letter as well sometimes. So usually when you have them, work with you to compile that, it may come up because they're, they know that we're looking at it too. So, if you have any recommended or preferred way that they describe that on your behalf, that's another option.
All right. A little bit of a logistical question. If someone is expecting their step 2 score to come back around a week after the September 27 release date, is it better to submit an incomplete application on September 27th or wait a week later to submit a complete application with the step scores?
For our program, it wouldn't matter because we would wait till it's complete before it gets to kind of the next phase. But I don't think either of those really make a huge difference, at least for our program.
I think, with the holistic review, we're not going to get all the applications reviewed in a week anyway. So, so I think waiting until it's complete would probably be preferred.
I totally agree, because if you have an incomplete application, and it depends on when we review the application. So if we reviewed it and it's incomplete, for our program, you just marked it as incomplete, and sometimes it takes a long time to go back to the incomplete application to see if it's completed. And so it might be easier for our program just to get everything completed. It depends when people review your applications.
Clearly, there's a variety of answers here. I would say it doesn't really matter either way, because we don't require you even have step 2 completed. So if it's useful information and at that point, but recognizing that there was also this thing called a pandemic for a while, and like nobody had taken any board exams, it felt like. So by the time applications came around, so I'm getting my brain used to the idea that people have actually taken step 1 and step 2 by the time that they apply. Each program sounds like it's a little different. You can do whichever. I'm sure that small window should not make too much of an impact.
All right. Given the removal of the hobby section and limitations to 10 experiences, would you recommend students use an experience slot to talk about their hobbies outside of medicine?
If those hobbies had an impactful experience and you feel like it shaped who you were and you can talk about it in that aspect, I think that would be reasonable. I personally loved that section, so I'm a little sad that it went away. So I love to hear about all the fun, cool things that everybody enjoys doing outside of medicine. And personally, I would love to hear about it in elsewhere. And I'm sure that'll come out during the interview as well. But certainly if you felt like it really shaped who you are and was that impactful, then that's a reasonable place to talk about some of those things.
Yeah, I haven't encountered any program director in any specialty that liked that change. So
Maybe we should start a petition list, bring back the hobby section. I don't know. All right. If it's getting later in the interview season and the applicant has not received an interview invite, is it appropriate to send a follow-up email to program expressing their continued interest? If so, is there an approximate time during the season when this would be most appropriate or effective?
So this year, and it's supposed to be previous years, but we're trying really hard this year to encourage programs to be as transparent as possible with where they are in their application process, meaning we still have interview availability, we've completed our, initial application review, whatever the points of communication will be. So, if you haven't heard anything, then yes, I think it's definitely reasonable to reach out. If the program has sent all of our spots are full, we don't have any more available interviews, I think sending an email isn't gonna really benefit you in any way. Again, and it's not per se a requirement that they send a specific sort of communication at any time. We're trying to just encourage that. So hopefully you will be getting that level of communication from the programs you've applied to help ease some of your anxiety throughout this waiting process, if that makes any sense.
And certainly, for those, oh, sorry, Dr. Pham, for like the group that might be on a wait list, you might not, throughout the season, we might, if you might be on the wait list. If someone drops off of our interview list or cancels, then we might pull from our wait list. And certainly occasionally hearing from someone on the wait list that expresses a particular interest might help them stand out a little bit compared to someone on the wait list that didn't reach out to us personally.
I totally agree. I don't think it hurts to communicate with the program. Just keep in mind that, like our program, for example, we didn't have the help of a coordinator for more than a year. We used to have two, and then something happens, we didn't have a coordinator. So you can see if things could be missed. And so it totally doesn't hurt to reach out to the program and say, hey, I haven't heard, I'm very interested, so I think it pays sometimes to be, a little bit assertive if you haven't heard, for at least for our program, because, we could totally miss things, especially if we don't have help with the coordinator.
Next question is, what is your opinion on sending like letters of intent after kind of interview season has completed?
I think that's there is room left in the NRMP regulations to allow applicants to communicate whatever level of interest they have in a program. And if that is something that is helpful for you, I support it. I do read them. I also respond to them. I, again, will give kind of generic language because you cannot say certain things or we get in trouble. I keep them in a file, and when we're going through our rank list, I make note of it. But I've never studied. I haven't actually looked to see how many of our matched applicants wrote me an email saying that we were their top program. I probably should. It'd be an interesting study. Again, there's a whole algorithm that goes into this that kind of makes things a little bit more complicated than that. So I encourage you to do what feels right.
I would say in general, it's typically unlikely that a letter of intent is going to change like our rank list. Our rank list is usually pretty finalized close to the end of interview season. And particularly this year, we're offering a no stakes optional in-person visit after the virtual interviews. So no stakes means that our rank list is finalized and that we're not going to change it beyond that. And so it's unlikely that a letter of intent, especially coming later in the season, would change anything on our rank list. But yeah, love to hear from people, and we take note of it. As Dr. Friedlander said, usually a response, and so nothing against sending those letters.
All right. During interviews, how can I show that I truly know and love the field of PM&R without being over the top?
I think if you can draw upon previous experiences that you've had, and if you can draw upon a wide variety of experiences that you've had for different questions, I think that very naturally conveys that.
I think, people find their connection to the field from a lot of different directions, and we recognize that, and also have varying levels of access to it during their education. So I think, reflecting and thinking about what it means to you, and finding a way to communicate that and how it connects to you as a person. I don't know that you can be overly enthusiastic about PM&R. I mean, look at us, we're all here. So I've never had an encounter where I thought someone was too excited. I will say that.
Yeah, I totally agree. We like the enthusiasm, we like the energy. And so nobody's ever been, dinged because they were overly excited or overly enthusiastic.
All right. How would you suggest students determine if they're competitive for a program? How does one determine safety, target, and reach programs?
I think having a good mentor who knows you well and is in the field of PM&R and likely has knowledge of other programs. I think that's really important, to have a good mentor to help guide you through that process and those recommendations. Obviously, it's going to be very individualized to each specific applicant. So having a good mentor is really important. Not just maybe even some resident mentors out there as well, which you can get through some professional organizations and connections.
All right. When talking about activities in the experience section, do you prefer bullet points or paragraphs?
So is that in the impactful experiences section? Is that what they're talking about?
Yeah, sorry. Like where you have your 10 experiences.
Okay.
Do you like having like a bullet point or like paragraphs?
So I think that is a little bit new this year, right? They had like the supplemental ERAS last year, and so this impactful experiences is a little bit new. So I don't know how it's going to be exactly. So maybe bullet point in regards to the experiences with, and then don't you get a paragraph to like explain it more and why it's impactful?
Well, I mean, just like in the like general, like your 10 experiences that you can talk about any of your experiences. I think you get like 1,000 characters. And so students are wondering if you like just like a kind of more like a CV style bullet point, kind of short to the point, or more of a paragraph approach to it, or if it matters at all.
Yeah, I don't know that I have a preference for that.
Never given it like a thought, actually.
Yeah.
Now you're going to make me think about these things. So let me Can I get back to you? Okay.
We'll follow up with the petition and on this question.
Well, we'll read it both ways.
In general, if you have a bullet point, it's nice to have maybe like a sentence describing. You don't want to be too verbose, because you get lost in the paragraph, and you don't want to be too brief either. So for us, it's somewhere in between, listing it and then give a little bit of explanation, and that way I think it's, it's easier to go through.
All right. In your experience, aside from kind of the concretes like board scores and publications and those type things, what is kind of some of the most important things that you've seen that applicants have done to really stand out? I know that's a really loaded big question.
I think any leadership type experience, whether it's PM&R or not, any type of teaching experience, educational experience, whether it's PM&R or not, and honestly, research. Obviously, we prefer PM&R related, but even if it's not PM&R related, for all those things, they still stand out positively.
You don't have to necessarily have 1,000 of all of those things, just to be clear. Like if your focus has been in leadership efforts and maybe you don't have as much research, or you've done a lot of research and maybe it's okay. I think having something strong and showing that you've dedicated a lot of energy and focus into something that in one of those categories is certainly something that would stand out. And again, I think it also probably is thinking about how it aligns with the mission of a program, and that's usually available to all of you to be able to view, like on a website, on the program's website. So how your experience is kind of aligned with that. Like we said, that's kind of how we're looking at, many of us are looking at applications that way. So something about your application that makes it clear that it aligns with the mission.
And I think some of those impactful experiences, can help you stand out as well, and show those experiences and your passion for things. We like to see volunteer activities, but we like to see that it's not just checking a box, that you actually have passion for some of those things that you're doing.
And there was a follow-up question in the chat on this topic is, what if you come from a home institution with very little PM&R, or maybe you're a little late to decide on PM&R and none of your experiences are related to the field?
I mean, I think we all understand that life happens, and that it's not entirely uncommon to have a late career decision, but you could certainly take the opportunity in the application to explain that somewhere as well.
My home institution did not have PM&R, and I did not decide I wanted to do it until very close to application time, so I can relate to that. I advise you to find a mentor. The national societies have, literally, you can fill a form out online and they will connect you with someone, and connecting with someone is a great way to start, and that will also probably give you an opportunity to ask a lot of these questions as well. And it's not too late, I promise. You still have a few weeks if you need to, and that will be another person who can sort of advocate for you if you feel like you need it, and share your interests. So we try and make it easy.
And having someone who's writing a letter of rec for you, kind of attests to your passion for deciding to go into PM&R, and that's often one of your mentors. It can be, for sure.
It's a good segue into one of the next questions was, how many letters of recommendations would you recommend coming from PM&R attendings versus other specialties?
I'd say at least 2 is nice to see.
I agree.
Yes, at least one for us. But you need to have at least a PM&R letter or one or two.
At least one.
You definitely don't want 3 PM&R letters for us. We have 3 PM&R letter, and that's a bit too much like to you that have, and other inputs from another specialty.
All right. Does your program have any additional or separate considerations for international medical graduates when they're applying?
We do not. There was
Yeah,
a question earlier about visa status as well. That does not factor into our decision.
yeah, I was actually going to say the same thing because I know there was a earlier question about that. Yeah, it's not really, like we said in the beginning, it's kind of looking at the whole application. We don't necessarily view that differently from the get-go by any means.
I agree with that.
Me too.
All right. If a student attended a conference but didn't present any research, should they still list that on their experience section?
Wouldn't hurt.
Hopefully you attended and learned something. So yeah, you should share it.
Yeah. And if you're at the conference, stop by and say hello to us who are there.
All right. Do program directors look at where we list our hometown is in the application?
We'll look at it. I don't know if it really matters. So I wouldn't say it really makes a big deal.
Yeah, look at it. Same thing.
Yeah, I think we looked at it during the interview. Is when we looked at it, just because knowing where people are coming from and things like that. But during the selection process to the interview, I don't think most of us look.
More like, oh, I've never been there. That sounds like a cool place, or oh, that's like next door to me. That's so awkward. But that's about the only thing that goes through our heads. I don't think anything else other than that.
All right. Do you mind sharing one major don't do or red flag in the application or interview?
I think we covered some of them. Don't make grammatical errors in your personal statement. Don't use a personal statement that says that I love ophthalmology. Don't be careful about using the same letters of rec if you're dual applying, some of those things that we talked about before.
Every part of the interview is part of the interview. Your communication with the program coordinator, your interactions with everyone. I mean, that's just as important.
I really strongly agree with that. Being kind and respectful to the program coordinator is really important, because if things start going in a bad direction, that will definitely impact things. It's a rare occasion that it happens, but just remember that. I think from an interview perspective, again, I know we want to come prepared and have some polished responses, but also listen to the questions that are being asked. And you can take a moment to say, I need to think about this, or, think about how you want to respond to something, as opposed to sort of giving like a prepared answer. It can seem like maybe you're not actually thinking about or listening to the question that's being asked. So, don't feel pressured to immediately speak. You can take your time and be thoughtful, so that you're actually processing things.
Remember that anything on your application is fair game to come up in the interview as well.
And the other thing is be responsive. So if the coordinator reach out to you about possible change of dates or time, it's good to, during the interview time, just check your emails regularly and respond to them.
All right. And then is there a general consensus that like 4 PM&R letters of recommendations is too much? Or is 4 letters of recommendation PM&R attending is okay?
I guess 4 seems like a lot, especially if that's all you have is just 4 PM&R. We'd like to see letters from outside of PM&R as well. I don't know what everyone else thinks.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think 3 would be too much to.
Yeah.
I agree. 4 seems a lot. I mean, ultimately, though, you're still wanting your 4 best letters. That's going to make your application the best. But typically, it would make your application a little bit more well-rounded if you had a letter or 2 from a letter or 2, a strong letter from maybe a different specialty.
I mean, just remember that PM&R is a pretty broad field and that you're going to have to rotate through a lot of different experiences. So demonstrating that you're capable of being versatile and successful in different areas, even if it isn't what you're ultimately going to do in your clinical practice one day, that's something that the letters of recommendation from different specialties can show us as well. So it just supports that reality and why it's useful to have some other outside opinions.
If you have 4 strong letters from 4 department chairs in PM&R, use them. I'm just kidding.
All right. It looks like our time's kind of winding up. I just want to see if y'all have any kind of last parting words or words of advice for applicants this season.
I think you're going to find that interviewing with PM&R program directors, assistant program directors, chief residents is probably better than you expect. It's we're really friendly and often have a great conversation with you. So we're just looking forward to meeting you all.
Where everybody's chill, and we certainly don't expect a perfect polished answer. There are certain answers that we asked you, and some applicants will say, I never thought about that. And that's okay to say. So you don't have to have a prepared answer for every single question. So just enjoy the interview, kind of be yourself, let it show through. I think that's the best way, because we're just trying to find if you're, we could provide you with the training that you wanted, which is the best fit. So, enjoy your interview time. It's the best way to get to know people and meet other people via the applicants as well.
I would say, yeah, just enjoy this process. The faculty that you meet with, the other applicants that you're interviewing with, even if you don't end up at that program, they're still going to be your colleagues in a small field, and you're going to interact with them in the future. And so really just enjoy the relationships that you form throughout this process.
Breathe. I know this is so scary and stressful, and but just know that we want all of the people that apply to be successful and join our field. We wish there were enough spots for every single person, I promise. So nobody is out to make sure you don't get into PM&R. We're happy that so many people want to join this specialty, and hope that everybody can become part of it one day, because like we said, we are a small field, but we're growing, and we're excited about that. And we're excited that you're all excited about joining the community, because we need your help.
Beautiful. Thank y'all so much for coming to spend some time with us. I know I really enjoyed listening to y'all's insight, and I hope that students got a lot from this. We really appreciate y'all taking y'all's time out of your busy schedule to come spend the night with us, and appreciate all y'all's efforts go into evaluating the applications and making sure this is a fair process for everybody. So thank y'all so much for coming out tonight.
Thanks, Hunter. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for having us.
Okay. Good luck.
Thanks. Take care.
All right. And then if y'all want to stay tuned, I'm gonna do the reflex hammer drawing real quick. Tonight we're gonna do a fancy dress race, so let's see who's feeling lucky. All right, let's do it. Chris trying to pull away. Uh-oh, losing steam. Oh, this- oh, Molly. Awesome. Congratulations, Molly. I'll shoot you an email. Um, and yeah, thanks for everyone coming out tonight. I hope y'all enjoyed it, and I hope y'all learned a lot from the fair. We really appreciate y'all spending time with us, and best of luck in everyone's applications this year.